Hello and welcome to the BNB Show. My name is Brendan Kane, and this man right over here, my compatriot, is Brendan Nelson. Seahawks, Brendan Nelson to you if it were. How you doing, Brendan?
Better now, better now. The team didn't feel complete until these last few days, but we're good now, right? We're good to go.
I think we are. We're going to have to kind of do a pulse check, I think, on this one. And of course, you're speaking towards the long and arduous process of trying to hire on the next offensive coordinator that took a good amount of time. It seems like it was a little bit to me of echoes of last year with McDonald. We were all starting to get impatient, I think, in those last couple of days. And we finally got our hiring, Brendan. We finally got our guy. I'm very interested to see kind of where you stand on this because based on kind of what I was hearing from some of my chat, there were those out there in this content creation world from a Hawk fan perspective or Seahawks content creator perspective that are going, I don't know. I don't know if we did the best on this one. And I don't find myself there in that way, but where do you find yourself?
I'm pretty happy with this one. I think it's a good hire. I think that it's one of the best things you could have done at this point. A lot of the things that I would have maybe liked to have done were not realistically on the table. Like you guys know, I've been talking up Frank Reich this whole offseason. He's been my guy for a long time. Doesn't seem like he wants to work in the NFL anymore. I really like Doug Peterson. Doesn't seem like he's interested in working in the NFL this year. It seems like he's taking at least 1 year off. Might not be able to work an offensive coordinator job at this point. So, you start reducing down the list a little bit. You start eliminating names. You realize, okay, can't get that guy. Remember, before the offseason started, we were talking about, oh, maybe we could go get Mike McDaniel. Maybe we can go get Kevin Stefanski. Maybe we can go get this. A lot of these guys didn't come available at all. They're still where they were, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to pick from what you can get. And I think the thing that people need to understand, because the general criticism that I've seen is along the lines of, well, he's never put together a great offense. Like he didn't have a top 5 offense or a top 10 offense last year. I think the thing that people need to understand is if he had those things, he would have gotten a head coaching job. The offensive coordinators that put together elite offenses that play call for elite teams, they're probably going to get a head coaching spot. So you don't get to hire those guys as your OC. So you can't find great results. What you need to find is somebody with a really good process that hasn't had the great results yet, and then enable them to have the great results with their great process. And I think that's what we've done here with Kubiak.
Do you think when I go and I look at the injury, there's two prongs of this for me, Brendan, when it comes to the Saints last year is if we have the expectation of I think you're right about that we're expecting we want a guy that's had the success and has really done a lot on that and not necessarily so with the Saints last year, but it did seem to me a bit of a tale of two seasons for them. Eric McCoy goes down for 7 games. Derek Carr goes down for 10 games. Chris Olave's out he only plays 10 games. Sorry. So Eric McCoy only plays 7 games. Carr 10 games. Chris Olave only plays 8 games. Alvin Kamara 14 games. Cesar Ruiz 13 games. Rashid Shaheed 6 games is all he ends up playing. So I look at this and I go, well, look, even if I had a grade A offensive minded guy going in there with Dennis Allen's defense and all of that team was healthy, I think maybe you could then go, okay, what did you do with that? And he did a lot with that the first 6-7 games before he started to lose these guys, especially Olave, which was a big impact. And McCoy's maybe one of the better centers in football. But once you lose those injuries, my question to you would be like, is there really an offensive coordinator that exists in this sport, given that predicament, that would have found success?
You wouldn't think so, no. Especially when you don't have a quarterback. And there was a part of this season where he was working with Spencer Rattler, who's a rookie. And I like Spencer well enough, but he's a rookie. And Jake Haener. And Jake Haener's not an NFL quarterback. Like that's kind of a deal breaker right then and there. Mm-hmm. That's pretty disqualifying for an NFL offensive coordinator at that point. You just don't have a chance. And then you lose Olave, then you lose Shaheed, then you lose your offensive lineman McCoy and what was the other guy, Ruiz?
Ruiz were out for a few games, yeah.
Yeah, Kamara basically played the whole season, given the fact that he's a running back, and running backs usually don't play the whole 17 games. So I think that's fine. But Kamara's also getting old, and I think as the season went on, you saw that he's getting to the point now where he can't put together a full good season because he's he's getting up there in miles, man. He's got the same miles on his body that most running backs get when they hit the other side. So for me personally, I would say that what you saw from him in those first few games when the Saints offense was playing really well, a lot of people say like the first 5 games, because that's the point where Carr got his first injury.
Mm-hmm.
You saw good results. And again, I'm not really going to worry as much about the results when I'm looking at a coach who's coaching such substandard players, because it's not like Derek Carr's that good, right? He's okay. Even when that Saints team is healthy, they're not that great talent-wise. Yeah. So I'm looking at the process. I'm looking at how he deploys things, and I like it. I think it has promise. I think this could go somewhere in a better situation with better players. So now the job is to get him those better players, and I think he'll be good.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And we do have we'll look a little bit at his time in Minnesota, where I think he had a little bit more of an opportunity to have a little bit more full health, if not a stacked unit there offensively. It had some good talent, but the line wasn't the best there. And he had a good season from within that, but that's my take on it as well. As I just don't think he had a lot to go with. Nobody's looking at Carr coming into this year going, he'll light the world on fire. He had Carr playing as efficient a brand of football as Carr's ever played in his career, which I think is saying something when you're talking about that talent level that was on that team. But I thought he did a good job. He's going to bring a system that we know is going to work, Brendan. It's not going to be one that we're going to have to wonder about and think, does this thing operate or not? And I guess now's as good a time. And let's go to the Vikings season real quick here, because he comes in for 2 years as a quarterbacks coach in Minnesota first, before he's then announced on as the offensive coordinator under Mike Zimmer, and Mike Zimmer's final year there in Minnesota. And he has I think people have not kind of given as much as they have questions, I think, Brendan, for the Saints thing. Isn't there kind of like, there's some good data here with the Vikings job and what he did there in that 1 year. Yeah, it's one season, but considering the parameters of play, he did a really good job on that, didn't he?
Yeah, that was the year before O'Connell got there, right? O'Connell
Right.
was not there at all. So Vikings in 2021, I mean, that was a team that had a good amount of talent on the offense, right? Cousins, decent quarterback. That was second year Justin Jefferson, I think.
That's right.
They still had Adam
Thielen.
Thielen, and they didn't have Hawkinson at that point. They had Conklin, right? Tyler Conklin, I remember now. Okay.
Yeah. And they had Cook. Dalvin was kind of still somewhat rolling okay. He was kind of at that point where he was quasi all right. But the offensive line was one where Darisaw was still just a rookie at that point. The rest of the line was really young and inexperienced, which harkens well for us on that, because he got them performing pretty well all the way around from that season. That was also, you remember, in 2021, we played the Vikings on the road. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
That offense took it to us, didn't they? I mean, that was one where I think they dropped 30 on us in that game on the road. And so he handled us pretty good on that one. But this is the point, Brendan, that I love as far as this data that I located on this, that I think just really tells a bit of the story on that year with the Vikings, which is going to be this one right here. And you'll see us off the screen for a second here, folks. But this is going to be the Vikings overall kind of snapshot of their offense and defense on the season. And I think you can quickly see as to why Mike Zimmer got fired, who's supposed to be a defensive-minded head coach. That's you're supposed to. This is what you're supposed to bring to play. And the quickest way for a defensive-minded head coach, Brendan, isn't to get fired, is to have your defense suck, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, even Pete Carroll never got down to 30th.
It's pretty rough, man. I mean, you don't stop the run and you don't stop the pass. And what stands out to me is that we know in those kind of situations that oftentimes you can put your offense in the predicament. We've seen it many times that when the defense isn't as kind of close to this area, now your offense has to really score every time and be maximum potent and all of that. And that can then make it hard to be efficient as an offense, especially efficient on both in regards to two different parts of the game. And when you look at them from a passing standpoint, 249 yards per game, that was 11th in the NFL. And then they brought the rushing offense with it too, even despite that bad defense, Brendan, because I know 17th isn't great, but it's not bad, is it, for middle of the road when you have a defense at the back end? Because one of the things we've learned about when you have a defense performing like that and you're behind in games and you're having to, score a lot of points, is that the run game gets kind of removed from you when that happens, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It really does. That's something that we've definitely learned over these last few years. And also, it just increases the pressure on these players to score every time they get the ball. That's one thing that I think we've kind of learned watching Geno these last few years, where there are these games where it feels like if we punt the ball once, we lose. And that forces this offense into situations where they're like, we have to score a touchdown. Like, we're not kicking field goals, and we're gonna keep trying to push it into that tight window. We're gonna keep trying to fit the ball into that shoebox so we can convert on 3rd and 12, because punting is death. And that creates extra turnovers. And by the way, Cousins did not turn the ball over a lot in 2021. So yeah, there's definitely an effect there. And I think it's very valid to bring that up.
Well, to Brendan's point on that, this is Kirk Cousins' stat line here from his career, a long career at that. And the key place you want to lock into is look at 2019-20, which is the first 2 years he's a quarterback coach under Kirk Cousins, and then 2021, where he's then the de facto, he's the OC for a year. And when you look at that and you look at Cousins through the rest of his career, this is the most efficient brand of football that he played, as far as clean. And to your point on the interceptions and all of that, and 21 especially, only 7 interceptions with the defense in the 30th and 33 touchdowns. And so, like you say, that's where it does tend to go when you see this play out like this with quarterbacks where they're pressed like that, where they're not able to be this efficient. And I think this is a real good indicator about his ability, especially to work with quarterbacks, and especially understanding, Brendan, don't we, about what his dad, Gary Kubiak, and how quarterbacks who worked under him talk about his effect on this way. And that he, the words that I kept coming back to and doing the research on this over and over again was that makes the job of the quarterback easier. And this is what I also see on tape. There are easy scripted throws. There are easy reads in there. Not everything's a high-level throw on a 7-step drop. And that's where you're able to still capture that efficiency with a player like this, even when you're probably having to throw quite a bit, like that Viking team had to that year.
Yeah, you look at Liam Cohen, who just got a head coaching job this cycle, which I don't think a lot of people saw coming, but I kind of did, because I looked at that Tampa Bay offense and everything is just about making life easy for the quarterback. They run more screens than anybody. They do more play action than just about anybody. They do a lot of rollouts where the quarterback only has to think about half the field. Like, everything in that offense is about, can I make it easy for my quarterback? And he had Baker Mayfield, who is an okay quarterback. He's like maybe about as good as somebody like a Derek Carr, actually, above average, barely though, looking like an elite quarterback because he makes life easy for him. Same with Jordan Love in Green Bay. That whole Green Bay offense is just make it easy. Screen, play action, rollout. And that's what I want, because that has guys like Jordan Love and Baker Mayfield, who I think are pretty, a little bit better than average quarterbacks, looking much better than they actually are. So that's what I want here.
Yeah, I do as well. And we've seen what happens when you're on the other end of the scale with Geno, where you're trying to make the game too hard, where it's all this control at the line of scrimmage, all these moving parts, all the changing of plays and the controlling of protections. I think with the protections with Kubiak are actually done more from the offensive line. So this is really, whether it's Geno or any other quarterback, you're going to remove the load. And I think that's a good thing to do with quarterbacks in the modern age, because there's so much on their plate. And if you can take some things off, if you can give them some easier throws, if you can remove down some of the intricate decision making that they have to make over the course of the game, I think you're going to get a better overall performance from that QB if you can do that. And it's easier said than done, as we've seen, but that's also where he's got a purposeful point to his attack, where that's kind of at the center of it a bit, and that he understands that inherently in what he's trying to do.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also think that there are some stylistic things that he likes to do that specifically address some of the shortcomings of the team last season.
Like what would you point to?
Well, so far in his play calling career, he has been one of the least frequent users of shotgun. He does not like getting into shotgun at all. In Minnesota, they were in shotgun 45.5% of the time, which was 31st in the league that year. In New Orleans last year, on a bad team, by the way, that was almost always playing from behind, 57.1, which was 29th. The only year where his play calling resulted in a high percentage of shotgun was the 6 games that he was play calling in Denver. And there you've got Russell Wilson, who's a shorter quarterback. You probably want to get him in shotgun. And Denver was also really bad that year. They played from behind a lot, so he probably felt obligated to get into shotgun. But this guy doesn't like
running some of that stuff too. Russ was he wanted to be in shot, so he's probably driving some of it.
Absolutely. And even that year, it was 16th. It wasn't that high. It was like average. So he really does not like shotgun. And I think going back to 2024, one of the things that bugged me about this offense was we were in shotgun constantly. And I don't want to be overreactive to the last thing that happened, right? But I do want to say, okay, let's find somebody that can help us address this clear deficiency.
Yeah, I think, don't you, if you're going to run so much shotgun like that, if that's really going to be your centerpiece like we tried to do last year, you probably need a Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson-like athlete from the quarterback position who can use their legs if you're going to live that much, right? And Geno can use his legs, but he's not a read option. He's not a read option guy, right? He ain't that type of guy that you go, I'll have him keep a quarterback. He only is going to have a work when the defense doesn't think it's coming, really. If they don't think it's coming, he's going to be able to roll. So wouldn't you say that's probably the only time you really want to be in that kind of shotgun, is unless you've got a guy that's just hyper mobile?
Yeah, or if you're always behind and everybody knows you're going to pass anyway, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I really like that. I think that's encouraging. And also, he's relatively balanced under center in terms of his run versus pass play calls. It's pretty much in line with league average in that area. He is heavily slanted towards passing from shotgun, which tells me that when he does go shotgun, it's mostly because the team is way behind. So it seems like this guy really likes going under center offensively, which as a Kubiak, I guess that kind of makes sense, right? That lines up.
Yep. It's, back in the day, go back to Bill Walsh with the Niners offense. I don't think that they ever with Montana or with Young were ever in shotgun. And I remember that was one thing with Holmgren at the time with Hasselbeck, even back in the day. Like he really didn't want to ever be in shotgun. Like he just, and Matt, of course, wanted it. Matt loved it. QBs love it, but it's the difference between what's better for what the QB wants and then what's best for the offense, what makes the offense most effective. That's always come down to for me. I get that the quarterbacks don't like to turn their back on play action from under center because they have to turn their back to the defense, but too bad, so sad. It's really effective and it's very helpful in making the offense go. It's helpful making the run game go because the defenses have to play that so, straight up. Looking at some details within this, scheme, Brendan, it seems like we might be getting a little bit of, and watching some of the tape, we might be getting a little bit more of the fullback brought into it. A position many of I'm sure you hear in your chat and my chat a lot about when's the fullback come back? When are we going to get a fullback come back into things? When's this going to happen? And I know Juszczyk is used still hugely down in San Francisco as a part of the formations and I formations and all that. This guy does the same thing. Taysom Hill was essentially their de facto fullback last year, and they ran a lot of it. So 2-man backfields, maybe some of Charbonnet at fullback. Maybe you do it with the tight end if you're looking to grab a guy that's kind of an H-back guy that you're going to move in that spot. But we're getting fullback back here now, aren't we? Yeah,
Byron Murphy's going to be playing both sides of the ball this year.
Everybody's up on this Hunter kid, Brendan. They're all about this Travis Hunter coming out in the two-way. We got the two-way. We got the badass two-way.
Yeah, but I do think you're going to see some of that. This guy does like his 2-back sets, and he also likes his 2 tight end sets. Does a lot of both, which does bring up an interesting question here. So another thing that Kubiak really does not like is 3 receiver sets. He has never been a big proponent of going 3 wide or 4 wide or 5 wide, 3 or more. He was 26th in 2021 with the Vikings and 31st last year with the Saints. And let's keep in mind here, that Saints team was bad. They were playing from behind a lot. They still didn't want to get a lot of receivers out there. Now, part of that is probably because he didn't have a quarterback for a lot of the season. When you're dealing with Spencer Rattler, you're not going to want to go 3 wide or 4 wide a lot because you want to protect him. I get it. But this guy, even in Denver, didn't go 3 wide very much. 19th in the league that year in 3 wide rate. So what that tells me is that, of course, he likes to have 2 backs. He likes to have 2 tight ends, likes to lean into that stuff pretty heavily. It does pose an interesting conundrum for the Seahawks personnel in 2024 because on the one hand, with Lockett probably leaving, that leaves us with 2 really good receivers. On the other hand, JSN is a pure slot. And I know some people might say, well, Adam Thielen is kind of a pure slot, and he worked in Kubiak's offense in 2021. But if you go back, Thielen lined up wide a lot back then.
Yeah.
It's only been the last 2 years he's become a mostly slot receiver.
Yeah.
So
lost that speed that he could be a Z for a while, but he lost just enough. He had just enough to
Mhm.
be a Z, and then
like there are ways to get a slot receiver on the field when you only have 2 wide receivers out there, but it would be unconventional. So how do they work with that? How does that get figured out? That's what I want to know.
That's where I'm very much encouraged by having the Justin Jefferson information in our back pocket, because Justin's also a guy that is going to spend a heavy amount of, and I'm sure he's probably gotten doing a little bit more now to the outside as his career's gone on. But when you talk about year 2 for Justin Jefferson, I don't have the data in front of me, but I'd estimate that he's spent a lot of time in that slot for the Vikings that year. And, or if not, I'd guess 70% minimum, if not higher. And so if that's the case, he's got 1,600 yard season out of a guy that's essentially in the position that we're going to ask Jackson to play out of. And so I think I feel okay with that at that point of it. It does, I think, to where I take it a little bit is that this puts more of maybe an onus upon finding that tight end / fullback type, if it's in the draft, or if it's a Patrick Ricard from the Ravens as a free agent you want to bring in. But you're going to probably find some guy that fits into that kind of role. And I don't know if it's necessarily a Barner type that it's 6'5", you want him rocking fullback. It's more, you want those guys a little squattier because they're kind of the lead back, so they can get into the pads of those linebackers and whatnot, trying to penetrate in the backfield and try and throw the blocks and whatnot. So it is something I think they'll target, but I think we'll be okay to. Did you look up that data?
It looks like Jefferson did play a lot in the slot in 2021, but he did play mostly wide. So, yeah, this is 2021. So he did play more wide than slot for sure, as did same for Thielen, by the way. But that's how they kind of survived that, because again, when he was in Minnesota, he didn't go 3 wide that often. So JSN, I mean, look, if there's one thing that every Seahawks fan is excited about offensively right now, it's JSN. That's the one guy who unites all different factions of this fan base right now. I'm wondering how this works out, because I don't think you can go back to only putting him out there 60% of the time. I don't think you can go back to that. So what do you do?
I think there's a more opening to being able to work him off of outside if you're going to be so run heavy and so much is working off the play action. So I think that does, rather than you having it more of a guy, quarterback on a drop, 5-step drop, no play action under center, or shot. Let's say they were in shotgun with the 2 wide, you'd have a guy that maybe need to win a little bit more on the outside, but because of that threat of the run, and especially watching a lot of these plays in the early part of the season last year for the Saints, where you're seeing so many oftentimes, and we'll show some, we got, just as a teaser, guys, we're going to be doing some cut-ups here that we'll show on the vid today, but you're seeing a lot on these cut-ups of these players oftentimes stepping in the wrong direction post-snap, thinking it's a run when it's a pass, stepping back off of a pass when it's actually a run. Maybe that provides a little bit of help, but I do think Justin Jefferson's probably more of a capable guy playing to the outside, to your point, than Jackson is. I think Jackson can do a smattering of it, but I don't think you're going to want him living in on the outside and asking him to win out there in that way. I wouldn't think. I'd be very surprised at this point if he makes that transition, not having done it in college, not really having done it as a pro. I'd like to kind of see, where was Jackson at as far as his.
I think it was like 30% as a rookie, and then probably a little bit less in last year, but I'm not 100% sure. So he does do it some. Everybody has to do it a little bit.
Yeah, so you're right. So you're on the button. So 31% he was wide in 2023, Jackson, and then he was 15.6% wide last year. So probably goes back to that 31% wide thing that he was running from that previously. But again, was he at his most effective at 31% wide, or was he at his most effective at 15% wide? Right? You see where I'm going with that a little bit. So I think maybe there is a little bit of validity to these concerns, just a little bit. It's not that he's not going to work, but I think it's worth mentioning on your part on this that you don't run these 3 wide, and he is a slot. So there's going to have to probably be some compromise here from his scheme to make this work at times. Maybe more 3 wide than he's run. The other things I'll say about this not running 3 wide, Brendan, is that you do look at, if you had Thielen and you had Justin Jefferson, you didn't have a lot there as the other receiver. In Denver, you had Cortland Sutton, and then they lost Patrick that year. And then I think Judy. They had a rookie. Yeah, Judy. Yeah, Judy was like, and then
KJ Hamler was the 3rd guy, and he never did anything.
Right. He never really did anything on that. I think they had more Judy on the outside there in Denver. But then this last year, you had Shaheed only played 6 games, and then you had Olave only played like 7 or 8 games, right? So that receiving core became butt thin too, right? So you're like, what are you going to – he probably was just like, I'll stay with the tight ends or Taysom Hill. He had some of these other parts that he could kind of lean on because he didn't have the receiver. I mean, their core sucks once you got past those 2 guys.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said there. I would agree with that. Let me see here. Who was the third receiver on the Vikings that year? Not much. It was KJ Osborne. He actually was okay that year.
Yeah, he's all right.
You know,
how many snaps did he get out of slot that year?
Let me see if I can look this up here. KJ Osborne. Come on. Pro Football Focus, I pay for you. Load when okay. It was he was mostly playing in the slot. He played
51%.
51. Yeah, that's about what I have too. By the end of the year, he was playing outside more, but early in the year, he was mostly a slot. Okay. Makes sense. So, a good offensive coordinator needs to adjust to their personnel, right? You need to accommodate your players.
You do. And I think that there is some beyond him. If we look at the Niners, slots that they've had running out from, Deebo Samuel to sometimes the way they use some of their other guys like Kittle, where he'll be used like a slot sometimes. I think that there's definitely some guys we've seen that have had some, albeit most of the guys in this offense are going to be more outside receivers and the guys that really get the job production in history when you go through the Shanahan schemes. You can go back to like a Rod Smith back in the day, or it's a tight end if you're working underneath, right? Like a Shannon Sharp type guy is where they're taking all the underneath routes, but we'll see. That'll be maybe the interesting part of this is how he adjusts into that to make sure that he is maximizing Jackson just as he's starting to emerge.
Yeah, that's what I'm interested in, because in theory it works nice, right? Because we're losing Lockett and we don't have an obvious replacement for him. So you wouldn't necessarily want an offense that depends heavily on 3 wide receiver sets because we don't have the third receiver. But because JSN's mostly a slot guy, it complicates things a little bit.
It does. Maybe a little bit less of an onus, though, upon needing to drive so hard to finding that Z, right, versus going and finding the tight end because of the more of the onus of the 2 tight end sets. And you're out 2 tight ends right now versus just only having Barner. And then, we'll kind of find a way to hybridize Jackson a little bit between the slot and the outside snaps with my reduction in how much I want to run 3 wide receivers if I'm Clint. Are you buying what I'm selling on that?
Yeah, I think so. Assuming that you're planning on rolling with JSN, which I got to believe we are. I don't think Kubiak can roll in here and say, okay, we're trading JSN because I can't use him right. That would never happen. So yeah, I think you heavily focus on bringing in a playmaking tight end to complement Barner, or like you were saying, maybe a H-back type tight end, whatever it is. Maybe it's Brady Russell. Maybe Brady Russell can do that stuff. That's how we used him last year.
It's possible. He'll be in the mix on it for sure. So we'll see if he, can get through there. What do you think this means for DK Metcalf?
Well, given the fact that we already don't really have very much receiver depth as is, I do think he's going to stick around. I do think that he's going to continue to be the, outside receiver on this team. Like, if at this point, I think doing anything else would be basically saying we're punting on 2025 because we won't have receivers. And I don't think you're bringing in Klint Kubiak to punt on 2025. He's trying to have his breakthrough year so he can get a head coaching job. And I have to believe you're at least saying, hey, we're going to try to get you good stuff to work with here.
I would agree. I would think so as well. And I'd expect it does get done. There have been if you look at a comp for like a guy that's been in the West Coast offense that's being run here, like Andy Reid got Terrell Owens, guy that is also kind of similar to DK, where maybe the route running wasn't perfect, but just such a freak show. Can you maximize that in this offense that requires such precise route running? And he was able to. It's Terrell. I think they got some of the best, maybe the best year of Terrell's career out there when he was with Donovan. So I don't think that there's no reason you can't utilize DK in the same way. Certainly, we'll show on some of these clips, Brendan, this offense is different, I think, from Shanahan's kind of tree on this, where there is more shot plays built within. I think it's kind of it's sort of the stuff Clint probably learned from Gary's time with Houston, having Andre Johnson there and how they maximize Johnson's career in that way as a deep threat receiver within the same stylistic offense that just doesn't tend to have it, built within in that. So I think there's a room here to find a really effective version of Metcalf as well. It's not going to probably be a high volume version, but you can certainly still get a guy up into the 1,400 yards in this offense, right?
Should be able to. Yeah. Yeah. Especially if you don't have that second receiver or excuse me, the third receiver. Like I was speculating a lot of people are growing on, who Ricky White is, the UNLV guy.
Haven't gotten to him quite yet.
Yeah. He's like a deep threat type. He's a little Rashid Shahidi, I guess.
Okay.
Some people are saying that could be like your third receiver, and he wouldn't produce a lot. He would just have a few big plays and try to keep the defense honest. It could be somebody like that. And then, you have to have somebody catch the ball. So you would expect DK to have a big year.
You would. I would expect if they're able to get him in. So be an interesting fit there. I am leaning to where the running backs are going to be able to be utilized all the way around, but I do think Charbonnet is the guy that might capture a little bit of Clint's eye on this as far as when you go back through the running backs that both Shanahan and Kubiak have looked to kind of put in there. They tend to be guys that are explosive, that have a little bit extra size. They don't have to be big boppers, but they've got a little bit more, just a little bit more to them as far as what they bring. And to me, Charbonnet checks that a little bit. I think there is room to get both of them in there, but if we get into training camp and they announce that, he's going to be more of the centerpiece back and Walker will be the counter change punch guy, I love Walker's talent. It's just that they have a kind of a type in this offense as far as running back, don't they?
Yeah, yeah. I will say that Kubiak is a big fan of the outside tackle runs, right? He's a big fan of that outside zone. I wonder if Walker might fit that better than Charbonnet. I think they can both fit it, but I do wonder if Walker could flourish in an outside tackle running system. Like last year, the Saints were third in rate of outside tackle runs.
I think he could. The thing I like about it with him too is it sort of gives him room for his inventiveness, Brendan, and to be able to still do his sort of, I want to do my riff now. I want to do my riff. It's time for a guitar solo. But what it does instead is where you used to go, we're going to plow you up into the A gap, and then now you're going to bounce out a side or the other, left or right. You'll bounce it outside if you don't see that hole closed. And then hopefully there's something on the outside open when you bounce that out. Now what you're doing is you're taking him to the outside, but you're sort of giving him like 3 lanes that he has to choose between then when he wants to engage to get downhill. You start out the stretch. Do you want to take it all the way wide, or is the defense overrunning it and you need to cut it inside? So there's still that, but it's sort of, it's like the half field read with quarterbacks, right? The full read can be overwhelming. You half read him down, and now it can be a little bit more simplified. For a guy in Walker that we've seen at times can sometimes do a little bit too much dancing. There's a little bit too much inventiveness there rather than just get downhill and go.
Yeah, that also occurs to me as well, because that's what Kubiak was famous for, right? One cut and go. His running backs, that's what they do.
That's their claim to fame. Sorry, my cat's being a little loud here on the side. I'm just losing her mind here today a little bit for some reason. We got a couple donations. Let me grab on these here. Seahawks OG, thank you for the $5 donation. Says, I'm happy about KK. My real concern is, will John Schneider prioritize the line to make KK's offense go? What are your comments?
Well, I do think that part of the equation here is we needed to find an offensive coordinator who could mitigate a lackluster offensive line. Because while we can all talk about fixing the offensive line this offseason, and I'm sure we'll make attempts to do so, there's a very good chance we have a below average offensive line in 2025. It just is. So as an offensive coordinator, you can do things to mitigate a lackluster offensive line. And those were the things that as the season went on, Ryan Grubb really did not do. Ryan Grubb didn't do those things by living in shotgun. He didn't do those things because he was extremely predictable pre-snap on whether or not he was going to do run versus pass. And if you're Kubiak, your job is going to be, okay, I don't have a great offensive line. So, or I may not have an offensive line. So therefore, I need to find a way to mitigate that. And some of the ways you can mitigate that is by being balanced, not giving away play calls, pass versus run pre-snap by your formation, which is something that Ryan Grubb did constantly. I think it was literally somebody actually went through and counted 90% pass out of shotgun, 90% run out of under center.
Hard to be that predictable in the NFL, man.
Yeah. And it seemed like it got worse as the year went on. It didn't get better, which is the crazy thing.
Yeah.
So by being balanced, which Kubiak has generally been under center, you're taking care of a lot of the battle right there. And having a more effective screen game is going to help. So there are ways around it. Now, obviously, we hope that JS does something to address it, but Kubiak has his own part to play in making this go initially.
Yeah, I think to your point on the screen game, especially when we've had problems and issues, and not just last year, but the previous years with stack boxes, simulated pressures, we've seen how much that can give our offensive line problems. And now you're going to have some checks that you can go to, be it bubble screens or be it just the traditional screen game, that you're going to run so much better than you've run past, because it's going to be such a point of emphasis for Kubiak on how he wants to make this thing go. So that will help. The Seahawks OG, the lack of being able to predict prior to the snap, and I can really guarantee this is, whether Kubiak's effective or not, I can almost guarantee you folks that the one thing you are going to get that I think was missing with Waldron and was missing with Grubb for different reasons. In Waldron's case, it was because the offense was so simplified in how it would attack. In Grubb's case, it was because it was too complicated in a lot of ways, and it just caused me problems. But he is going to make it almost impossible for defenses to predict what you're doing prior to the snap. They have to wait until the actual literal snap occurs to know where the play is going and what's happening. And that's a major advantage versus where we've been offensively in years past in that way. And it can't be undersold on how much that helps the offensive line out. And it also can't be undersold on how much it hurt the offensive line like last year when they weren't being given that advantage. On top of not being necessarily a terribly talented group, then you remove that advantage as well on top. And it's kind of like, okay, well, I can see how this thing then collapses, can't we?
Yeah. That may have had more to do with the struggles of the offensive line than even the talent level, in a way. Like, I'll bet you can't find another NFL offense in the last 20 years that was that straightforward with their pre-snap, a look to their post-snap intention.
Yeah. I don't think you could either. And I this is why Grubbs was let go, is that so these are things you have to bring in as an offensive coordinator. It's not kind of well, if you can do it, it's nice. It's no, this is a necessity. If we're going to live in the sport, you've got to do this, and then bring all of your fancy stuff with it on the back end. But this thing's got to come first and foremost with it. And so it still doesn't mean, Seahawks OG, that we don't need to prioritize the offensive line. We do. It just means that this should be naturally improved by just the scheme transition a little bit alone. And then if you are able to really upgrade that offensive line and put out those guys that, can really get it done. And I guess the guy that I would point to on the Seahawks OG is a guy like Eric McCoy. He plays like this first 7 games. He's been a top 5 center in this sport, but he was having a career best season, even through those first 7 games. Has the injury, he's out all year. Connor McGovern comes in and now fills in for him at the center position. Connor was kind of a guy like Laken Tomlinson, where the last couple of years his performance had really been kind of dipping and dipping and dipping and dipping. He comes in there in the Saints and he has his best season in a few seasons. He looks like he's still able to play in this league. And that's by Klint Kubiak's play calling. That's how he's going to protect some of his offensive linemen, especially if he knows he's got a weakness in a given area. But both of those two players and how they played tell me a little bit about something in Kubiak, don't they, Brendan? Especially when you look across that offensive line. I'm sure you looked at the data on this too, where everybody on that offensive line was improved. Cesar Ruiz had the best, and not only improved, Brendan, the best year of their careers in a few of these guys. I know some of them don't have, like Trevor Penning, maybe the deepest, longest careers to operate off of, but even in Ruiz's case, he's been in the league 4 or 5 years, best season of his career.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something I picked up on. And remember, 7 games, they were protecting really bad quarterbacks, Rattler and Hainer. And usually offensive lines look worse when they're protecting bad quarterbacks, right?
Yeah.
They look worse when they're protecting an inexperienced quarterback that can't get the ball out, that can't make reads fast enough, that can't make decisions fast enough. So that is very, very notable as well. And not that they looked particularly good, but with the benefit of hindsight, we can say that Denver offensive line was really, really good, right? Because they've become maybe the best offensive line in football just 2 years later with almost all the same players. They just needed a quarterback that knows how to play with an offensive line. And, you already talked about the Vikings offensive line. Back then it was, what they have, Ezra Cleveland. I think that might have been Brian O'Neill, might have made the Pro Bowl that year. It was a pretty good unit, actually, there too. So, yeah. I would say that I think that's a fair way to evaluate this.
Certainly something we've seen from the Niners too, right? Well, especially the last couple of years, where you have Trent Williams, but And Pooney had a good year from this year, but they're a line at times where you're feeling like, man, how they're sort of playing above their skis here a little bit. Where these guys aren't that talented, but they're getting the job done, and that's where I come back to. I think Shanahan's scheme, the West Coast offense scheme, can help these linemen out a little bit.
Yeah, all Niners fans do is complain about Jake Brendel, and somehow he's the starter for teams that make the NFC title game almost every year.
That's it. So I think there is something to this a little bit, in that the way that he bakes this cake is going to help these guys out and put them in a position to succeed rather than a position to fail. But you do need still the talent. We still do need to prioritize it. It's just that this should improve some things, and especially too, not just with Brendan, not just with Grubb, but with also Waldron. I think this was a problem with Waldron. Your predilection to hit the A and the B gaps, your lack of targeting the middle of the field. Things like that made it very easy to kind of predict what your offense was going to do. The limited route tree you had your guys running at times. So I think it'll be beneficial. But yeah, Seahawks OG, we got to make it a priority. Carson Youngren over on your side with a $10 donation. Thank you, Carson, for that. He says, "Go Hawks! Thanks for the great content."
Thank you, Carson. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Carson. Appreciate you. Very kind of you. And Kevin Mullen with a $5 donation. He says, "Isn't Kubiak hiring a zone blocking scheme a double down on John Schneider's view on the offensive line? Alex Gibbs says he can turn a garbage man into a guard. Any love for a defensive line with the first pick?" Ooh, good questions all the way through there. So let's go with the first one, Brendan. Is Kubiak's hiring a doubling down on the zone blocking scheme by John Schneider, and thusly his view of O-line being that it's one that doesn't tend to, quote unquote, value O-linemen a ton in that way?
I would say probably, although I would say that Saints offensive line has had a lot invested into it, right? They have first round pick after first round pick up there. So it's not quite that simple, but yeah. I think the idea with the whole zone blocking scheme is that you get guys that can play in space and everything else is kind of secondary. So yeah, I could kind of see that, but you still need guys who can play in space. You still need guys who can hit those blocks in zone.
Yeah, Kevin, I think the thing with the Alex Gibbs thing too is that the Gibbs quote comes from a mid-90s Denver Broncos team that was at the forefront. This was at a time when it was all about, 80s, early 90s, bigger linemen, the better. The bigger lineman, the better. And nothing was about mobility. And Alex comes on at that time and he sort of turns everything into mobility. And it turned the league on its ear because nobody had those kind of lines constructed that way. So for his perspective, he's kind of joking. He goes, it was just that I need the mobile guy more than I need that big fat mauler guy that everyone else in the league is looking for. It has kind of changed where that is kind of now 20, 30 years ago from when he was talking about it at that time. And the sport's changed. The type of linemen have changed. The mobile schemes that are in place have changed. So back to Brendan's point on needing, you still need a good offensive line. This is not one that's like the mid 90s because it's no longer a du jour thing. It's like the Carroll thing when he walks in and he wants bigger cornerbacks and nobody's looking for bigger cornerbacks throughout the NFL. So he's able to have his pick of big cornerbacks and it's this kind of thing where nobody's like, God, these guys are so big compared to everywhere else. That's more of what that is. Like, because you can say that about Carroll, right? He could say, give me a garbage man that's 6'3" with long arms and I'll make him work at corner. Like you could kind of, I know Carroll never said that, but you could kind of see him saying something equivalent, couldn't you, Brendan? Like in that way.
And there were a couple of times where he kind of did, he took guys that no one valued at all. Yeah.
And if you're at the forefront on a scheme on that, you can kind of do that way. But I think when you're at this point where this scheme's prolific, it's all over the NFL. Everyone's kind of running the Shanahan-like scheme. So everyone's going to be kind of doing it. You're not going to be able to get away as much with hey, we're the only ones that are looking for these kind of lineman thing. You got to kind of have the good guys. We need the mobile guys. You do need to invest into it. It was true, I think, 30 years ago, but I just don't think it's as true today. I think it's more now. It's evolved a bit. As far as any love going for the defensive line, have you done a mock yet? Who was your first mock?
I've done 5 mocks on my channel so far.
Who's been your first pick on those?
Well, I've done 5 different top picks. So which one do you want?
Hit me with all of them.
Okay. I did one mock where my first round pick was Tyler Warren.
Okay.
I did one. This was months ago though, where it was Emory Jones. I don't think he's a first round pick anymore. I did a Mikael Williams one, the Georgia edge.
I like that.
I did a Kenneth Grant one, so that's the defensive lineman.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've done a Tyler Booker one. So those are my 5. I'm trying to mix it up every time. You can't you can't do the same one every time. You're trying to like come at it from different angles.
Yeah, I kind of look at it, see if you see the same way, that there's, it's kind of like there's 9 or 10 sort of scenarios, especially when it comes around the first pick, that the way this will probably play out. There's obviously maybe more guys in there, but you kind of get narrowed in as you do this, I think, and you're just trying to run through the different scenarios of, okay, we go here, this means this will happen. If we go this other way and we go this, then that means that'll happen. That's kind of how I see it. And I think that's why I think it's of such good use, is that you end up going through the various scenarios and you'll find probably one of those scenarios is the one that plays out, to how it's fit to true.
Yeah, we got to see how these things play out. And also, don't forget, we got to get through free agency too. If we sign Tevin Jenkins, we're probably not drafting Tyler Booker, right? If we sign, I don't know, who's the big tight end on the market this year? I don't even know.
Is there one? I thought that it's Juwan Johnson of Saints, maybe.
Yeah, if we sign that, then we're probably not drafting Tyler Warren, right? Or if we sign Taysom Hill, we could get Taysom Hill from the Saints. Let's go.
Yeah, they could maybe do that. So I defensive line's in play. I think the edge, like Brent said with Tyleek, to me, I just go, if you're going defensive line, Kenneth Grant's a possibility, but once you remove him off the table, there's really no one they're going to grab like 3 tech wise, and there's no other nose tackles. So it's more to like what Brendan talked about, the Tyleek Williams that he went with. That's one where I think in one of my mocks I'll end up going with as well, because he's my number 2 edge, and there's a way that he could end up dipping down the board and landing at your spot as that number 2 edge for me.
It's not Tyleek Williams. It's
not Tyleek.
Williams. Okay.
Yeah, Mike. I keep saying that weird. I get there too many Williams, man. It's Michael Williams. Sorry, not Tyleek, but Michael Williams. Georgia kid. So probably more an edge is there, Kevin, as the possibility there on that pick than a outside of Grant of a defensive lineman. Wouldn't you say, Brendan?
Yeah, because there are a lot of high quality first round edges in this class, and there's only a couple of nose tackles.
Yeah. So probably more into that range of it where it goes with it. But I am fully expecting Kevin. I've said I would be absolutely, regardless of Clint's appearance here, I just cannot see how John ignores the offensive line this offseason in the way that he has in recent years prior, or just kind of slightly touched on it rather than really hammering it. I just think he would be, he's going to get raked over the coals if it fails. And why take that risk at this point? If he hammers it and it doesn't work out, people aren't going to hammer him. If he doesn't hammer it and it doesn't work out, he's getting hammered. It feels like to me a pretty straightforward approach for John to kind of learn his lesson on this one, but just for one season to take the heat off of himself.
Yeah, if Pete Carroll can get fired, anybody can get fired in this organization. Something to keep in mind.
That's right. And his grace period of having kind of a reset is going to probably expire here pretty soon if he doesn't get success. And again, same issues keep propping on up regardless of the different coaches you bring in. We'll see on that. Thank you though, Kevin. Seth Parkinson, thank you for the $5 donation. Seth, a BNB deep dive. I'm in. Do you think Kubiak will have a say regarding the long-term plan at the quarterback position?
I'm
kind of not, huh? Because I think you're thinking the same thing I am. How long is he going to be here?
Yeah, exactly. Like if Kubiak gets his way, he'll be here for 1 year, right? He'll do so well he gets to be the head coach of like the Cowboys next year when they fire Schottenheimer.
Yeah. I think, well, maybe that's what you say to him. Like, how long you plan on staying? Like, hey, I like this QB. Great, Clint. How long you plan on staying here again? If you're successful, and I mean, there are some recent OCs and it's been kind of a trend a little bit here. We've seen some of these guys going back now and not necessarily, taking jobs a little bit, but I think your point again is like, that's it there, Seth, is how do you say we're going to give you a voice on this if you are a guy that you come and get your custom made quarterback and then you go and become a head coach a year after, and it's like, okay, now we got to bring in another OC who may or may not like this guy. I think it's more of a decision for the coach and the GM than it is for the OC because of that. If these guys stayed around a little bit, you'd give them more of a voice. But they're Johnny come latelys, man.
Yeah. Ask Liam Cohen, who literally like bolted out of town like the Baltimore Colts.
Well, he played that like a fiddle though, didn't he?
Yeah.
Like he played that whole situation perfect. Got his money, got the GM out, like he finessed the hell out of that situation.
Yeah, and he's going to a team that probably won't fire him anytime soon because they need stability, even if it's bad stability.
Yeah, that's right. So props to him. He's a goofball though. God, I thought Gannon was I thought Gannon was as goofy as you could get as some of coaches go, but this guy I think might have him beat, which is saying something. He didn't go full. He didn't go full pew pew pew, but the Duval thing's pretty close.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And I like Cohen, but I don't know if he has the gravitas to be a head coach.
Yeah, you gotta have a way you're carrying yourself a little bit. Maybe this is the new model of player, Brendan. You know, maybe we got old school thoughts on this, and that this is the new model of players. They want the goofy dude that's like, I mean, Sirianni's kind of a goofball, so I mean, it's working for him. So
yeah, you got to be able to conduct yourself in the right way. It's like that's when I knew Singletary was going to fail as a head coach. Like
he took it too far with he took the gravitas thing too far, I think, a little bit.
Like, he like pulled his pants down and mooned his team in the locker room in his first ever game. Like a good coach would never do that. Like Bill Belichick would never do anything like that. Tom Coughlin, no. Holmgren, no, you never see it because they know how to control themselves. They're adults.
Yeah. And their fire is going to come from a very specific place. They might unleash the whole flames on you, but there's a tactical approach to how they're doing it rather than just you're in the emotions of the coach caught up into it and you're out of control a little bit, which if you're dropping your pants, you're probably getting pretty close to kind of out of control, you know.
Yeah.
Can't win with them. Can't win with them.
Classic moment though. I'm happy it happened.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. I think it's more McDonald, Seth. McDonald and Schneider on this one. And yeah, I think you used to be able to go to the OCs and ask him, but now you just can't trust these guys. They're here today, gone tomorrow, man. Mm-hmm. Eric Tams, thank you for the $10 donation over on Brendan's side of that. And if you are on Brendan's side or on my side or on both sides, do please hit that like button. Get subbed on up today if you could for us, folks. Thank you, though, Eric, for that $10 dono drop. You guys read much into the quarterback struggles at the Senior Bowl?
I mean, in the sense that it confirms what I thought about this quarterback class, I guess, right? I didn't think it was very good, and I still don't.
Yeah, I think that my thing that I'm noticing, Brendan, a little bit, let's see if you're buying into this, is that there's a feeling to me that the Senior Bowl has continued to elevate and elevate and elevate and elevate and elevate and elevate and elevate every year, it feels like. And I just think now it's getting to the point where it's almost like I'm starting to get a sense that this is starting to override a little bit of the evaluation of what happens on the field, you know, where it becomes this. And I think the Hawks have remember the LJ Collier story, you know, 90% pass rush win week in the Senior Bowl, right? 90% win rush that year, that bowled him over. Guy had 3 sacks in his final year of college, but you had him winning 90% of the time at Senior Bowl. So he's about to be a monster. And I feel like this happens with like Walter Nolan's a guy that I think this is happening with a little bit right now, where people are like trying to make like Jalen Carter comparisons. And so I think the same thing with these quarterbacks where, you know, yeah, you're going to see, like Brendan just said, you know, these guys got some good stuff to them. They got some negative stuff to them. It's why Brendan and I have been in the same place on this, where it's like, yeah, there's a glut of guys in sort of that late second to late 4th round range. You got a glut of guys where they should go. But what you have going on, to me, Brendan, see if you buy it, is these NFL evaluators or whatnot, I think, are kind of trying to talk themselves into a couple of these guys, be it a Jackson Dart or a Jalen Milroe. And like, hey, they should go in the 3rd round. Yeah, but if you look at them just through this perspective, and then you just protect them through this way, and you just do this one thing with them right like that, then they could be that, you know, rather than, no, it's a 3rd round quarterback. That's where you take that guy. That's the spot.
It feels like that happens pretty much every year. There's at least one quarterback that teams talk themselves into late in the process. Like the famous example from when I was a kid and I was just getting into this stuff was Jay Cutler. Right. That was the Matt Leinart, Vince Young draft. And then it felt like the NFL just needed a 3rd quarterback, and Jay Cutler just shot up at the last second. And I think I don't think he went higher than Leinart, but it was close.
Yeah. No, I think he might. It was they were like back-to-back picks or something on that one. You're right. I forget which one it was, but they were just about back-to-back picks, like 10, 11 or something.
Yeah,
in the 1st round.
Yeah, and what was the other one? It was like Tannehill. That was the big one. Also, you had Luck and RG3 1-2, and then Tannehill shoots up at the end. Some years it's Christian Ponder.
Yeah, Christian Ponder was another one. Trubisky.
Mm-hmm.
Kenny Pickett at 20th with the Steelers. I think that's where you go, the learn your lessons thing, Brendan, and doing this. That you learn as you go along and doing this. And so my lesson, Eric, and to your question on this, is just the lesson I learned is coming away. This happens every year. Don't let yourself get caught up in Senior Bowl stuff. Don't get yourself caught up in combine hype. Go back to the tape. Trust what the tape's telling you. The tape will always tell you the whole story. And the thing of these Senior Bowl practices, you have these quarterbacks. Some of them have been not playing in a good bit of time, right? They're working out, training, and all of these receivers are all fresh to them. So they have no chemistry with these receivers that they're throwing to. They're just kind of trying to throw a blind to them and hope they're getting to the right spot. When we know that that's what you need is repetition to be on the right page with these kind of guys. On top of the fact that, Brendan, it's kind of a weak wide receiver class. So you're throwing to guys you have no chemistry with out there at the Senior Bowl who are not the most talented of dudes. I don't know if you're watching some of the releases yesterday of some of these receivers off the line of scrimmage on the one-on-ones. Did you see a couple of those cut-ups on Twitter?
Yeah, I did see those.
They're doing the cha-cha-cha before they leave the line of scrimmage, and you're like, you're not going to get away with that at the pros, buddy. Like, what are we doing, guys? So I think you got to take a bit of that into all that. At least I do. I take all that into account and say, this informs me a little bit of this, and I can't take – there's some – you want to watch them. You want to see how they look. You want them to look better. Guys that are maybe small school guys, if they can come out and do something, that's noteworthy. But when it comes to some of the guys like a Jackson Dart, I just don't think that should be moving the needle in any way past the film for a guy that's 4 years of college tape that we got to go off of.
Right. Yeah. And that's why I said, like, it's confirming my priors. I'm not throwing my priors away in favor of what I'm seeing at the Senior Bowl. In this case, it's confirming my priors because I don't like these players. I don't like Jackson Dart. I don't like Jalen Milroe. So to me, it's just like, yeah, that's kind of what I expected, but it's confirming what I thought previously, if that makes sense.
It does. What about the latest idea I've heard proposed is Milroe as the Taysom Hill role?
Yeah, that's actually what I think will happen. I think he's going to end up playing tight end.
Okay. I think I could very well see the same thing. I just see a guy throwing the ball that just does not, even back into college, it doesn't look right. It just doesn't. It's not that it's not a broken motion. It's not that it's not that he has a hard time of replicating his motion, right? Like one time it'll be here, one time it'll be here, one time it's over here, one time his feet's here, one's upper body's here, but just it doesn't look right, like smooth coming out versus other quarterbacks. It's just it's like he's fighting himself, like a receiver that's fighting his hands. He's fighting his throwing motion when he throws the football.
Yeah, he's like a poor man's Anthony Richardson, and Anthony Richardson is no good. So you're already working from a pretty bad baseline.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't want to be poor man of a bad. But thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. It's a great question too, by the way. Legacy Comedy, thanks for the $2 donation. He says, who is better, Baker or Geno?
Yeah, I think this is an easy one. I don't think Mayfield's anything special at all. I'm not. He's okay, but I think what Tampa Bay has done with Cohen and Canales the last 2 years has been really, really good at making him look better than he is. I don't think he's that good.
Yeah, I think that Geno's a better quarterback legacy. I think, to Brendan's point, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had the second rated pass blocking unit in football by PFF. We were at 28th. They had a functional run game. They had a functional defense. Baker's had that. He's got an all-pro in Tristan Wirfs at left tackle. He's got Luke Godecki, who's a top 10 rated right tackle this year in the sport. They drafted Graham Barton, who was one of the safer picks, who's played really well for them at center. They've got a couple guards that are good. So it's like he's got the thing that we're trying to beg for Geno to get, and to say, look, you want to see a Geno throw for 40 touchdowns like Baker did this year? Give him an offensive line like that, and he will do and replicate the same thing, if not do even better. That's why we've hammered this so hard, is that the proof's in the pudding, and that you see when the quarterbacks are given this kind of supporting structure in front of them, say nothing of an offense and a defense and the playmaker, like, yeah, he's gonna fly, but you haven't given Geno that. And so Baker's been given a really great opportunity to do what he did. Brendan's points about Canales and the offensive coordinator that just got hired and the smart minds that are guiding him along through this. I think Baker's done a good job to improve himself. I think he has, but at the same point in time, you put Geno behind that supporting cast of Tampa Bay last year, and I think that he goes past Baker's season. He does better than what Baker did.
Yeah, Baker's still turning it over a lot, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that because he does throw it a lot, but his turnover rate's a little higher than you would like for a quarterback throwing that many screen passes. And
who has that much protection in pass pro, right? Who's not inundated where you go, well, he's just getting hit with this quick pressure, so he's just trying to get rid of the ball and it got hit. And like Geno, where it's like 2 or 3 of his interceptions are tip passes, or a guy's hanging onto his ankle, or he's just about to be taken down. Not as much of what you can say there with Baker on that situation with his line play there. So yeah, we're succinct on this one, Legacy. We're going Geno all the way on that one.
Right.
Phoebe Moore Seahawks, thank you for the $2.10 donation. Appreciate that, Phoebe. Says, Brendan Nelson, what are your thoughts on the Kansas City Chiefs Buffalo Bills game?
I mean, it was when Christian Benford went down, I had a bad feeling about where that game was going to end up. And that wasn't necessarily the only reason why they lost, but man, that was a really bad time to lose your best cornerback.
What are your thoughts on the officiating in that game?
I mean, there were a couple of bad ones. Man. It is, I'm sure you've seen the meme now about how in tennis matches, they have the thing that tells you exactly where the ball landed when they're trying to determine if the ball's in or out. And somehow they don't have that system for football. When they're talking about like the spot on the first down where he probably got it. I've seen the play a couple times now. I think he got it. I'll admit I'm not 100% sure, but I do think he did. How
about the catch?
The catch, I didn't expect them to overturn it. I'll say that. Once they called it a catch, I was like, yeah, they're not overturning it. And I didn't realize it had hit the ground because it wasn't a catch. I didn't realize it had hit the ground until later. I'll admit that. But, I'm not officiating the game. It's not my job to see that.
Yeah.
So it's tough, man. That one's tough. Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a lot of that stuff going on, but I will say at least the Bills had a chance to win at the end regardless. I did appreciate that. At least the end of the game didn't feel like it was that, but that spot, that one's going to sit with you because the Bills were ahead when that happened, right? They were up. They had the ball, they were driving, and it's like I remember watching that game live at that moment and thinking, I kind of feel like this is about to be over.
I felt like the game was I do feel like the game was massaged. And there's a few calls that come out of it. I think the NFL is doing this weird thing with the Chiefs where, there's a little bit of pushing them up and just to get to at least the Super Bowl. I don't know if they're going to fully try to get them to get the game, but if I was a Bills fan, Brendan, I'd be kind of sick. I think that I don't know if I'd feel like we got a fair shake of this game. And it bothered me a little bit because that catch was nowhere near being a catch. It touches the ground with Bishop with his hands on the ground. The receivers never got his hands on the ground when the ball hits the ground. And it's as always with these plays, it's the major game-changing plays. It's like the final game, the final play there with Allen when he falls back and he throws the prayer up, Brendan, and the guy has the drop, but they had a flag called there. So if he caught the ball, they could flag him back out, right?
Yeah, I was wondering about that because I never saw the physical flag. I only saw the flag graphic. So I don't know. Did they throw a flag?
Yeah, they had the flag. They picked it up because they didn't need it.
Okay.
They threw the flag because they were going to overturn the call because it was going to be this amazing catch that the Dalton kid made. And then they were going to have the flag so they could then bring it back. So it's like, that's the thing about these is the timing. It's the moments. It's when they come out. But yeah, that was kind of dirty to me. That game had some spots into where I went. Already coming in, you were a little bit worried about this after that Texans game with some of those calls, and you're going, all right, it's really annoying to me. A Chiefs team that's this good, you're giving them this many. How about we get one game with them, Brendan, where they don't get the benefits, where there's a game where like the other team got the other turn on in a playoff game, right? Because now they played 11 playoff games, and the last, I think, 10 of them, they've had more penalties called on the opponent than themselves. That's continued to carry on. That continued to carry on through this game. Bills had more penalties on them than the Chiefs had on them. That's 10 straight playoff games, 10 straight playoff opponents. Those aren't bad teams they're playing against. Are the Chiefs, they just play that clean in the playoffs? They just play that brilliantly clean? I don't know.
Yeah. This Super Bowl is going to be interesting, man, because, the Eagles have the better roster. I do like the matchup a little better for the Chiefs. Couple people have already, I'm not the first person to point this out, of course, but that Andy Reid offense versus that Fangio defense, it feels like Andy Reid was built for these moments.
Yeah, it's one that's he's going to know how to attack it. That's for sure. So they'll have the methodology. I think they're just going to dink and dunk it, to be honest with you. I think it's like they'll trot out a lot of the similar game plan they did with the Ravens last year. You're going to see a lot of bubble screens early on and throws to the flat. and not trying to do too much, running the ball with a lot of just 3 yards in a cloud of dust and just control the ball a little bit on that side of it. But they're going to eke their way up the field, and you can do that against this Eagles team. It's like they're wanting you to get impatient. They're wanting you to try to take those deep shots. And so run the ball with the 6-man boxes, Brendan, and the cover 2 shell on the backside and live in that. And I think the Chiefs won't overthink that. That's the real thing that Reed does, is he just doesn't overthink stuff. He will keep it simple, but in the smart way, where it's like, yeah, it's simple, but this is also the smart methodology of attack to go at this particular defense.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
12 for life. Thank you for celebrating 10 months here on the Hawks Nest side of it. I appreciate that long time support. It says quarterbacks are overdrafted and overpaid. Build the O-line. A little twist on the John Schneider quote there, Brendan. I kind of dig that. And yes, indeed, quarterbacks do tend to get a little bit overdrafted and definitely get overpaid. There's nobody that I think would argue that one.
It feels like the media creates it with some of these quarterbacks, right? They want another quarterback to talk about, so they just find another quarterback to push up there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that always is. It's part of what causes these guys to rise. These guys start hyping them up too, especially prospect wise. But it's also the fan thinking on this 12. For I've said this isn't just the thinking that you see from front offices and national pundits. I think fans have also kind of adopted this thought process at times of quarterback's on high. The quarterback is separate from the rest of the team. He's this great phoenix that needs to fly. And if you don't have this great phoenix, then it doesn't matter what you have on this whole rest of the side. This is all that matters. This is the whole focal point. And I think that we've gotten to a place where that's pushed beyond where is reasonable, and it's gotten pretty crazy now. And that's where there's a market opportunity, I think, to go the other way with this, Brendan.
Yeah, but it's going to take the cooperation of the whole league to start not paying these quarterbacks so much money. And it could be a while before we get there.
It could be 12. It could be. So we'll see if there's a reckoning at some point on this, Brendan. But you're right. They're in their mode right now. That part's for sure. Wally World, thank you for the $2 donation. Wally World, do you think we draft a quarterback now or next draft?
That's really hard to project. I'm going to say next draft, just because I think that you have Sam Howell really cheap for one more year. I think you do extend Geno. I think you don't want to get a third quarterback and take up that roster spot so you wait until Howell leaves and then you draft the quarterback.
Yeah, I could see it definitely going that way, Brendan. I think that the way that they would draft, I think a guy this year is that there's got to be a guy that drops into the third round that John likes. I don't think he's looking to really go up and draft higher than that. I could be wrong. It's just he might be in love with one of these guys and just wants to take one in the second round, like a Milrow or a Dart or whatever. But I would tend to think that he's wanting him to land in that spot like Russell, where he's like in the third round with Russell. He's like, I can't believe we got this guy in the third round that's dropped to us. We're jumping on this. And it was such good value at that point to grab versus reaching a little bit. It's like past the prior point, 12 for life. And the message you just said about quarterbacks being overdrafted and overpaid. John doesn't want to overdraft. That's something that we've been able to see from him since Russell's left, and that he's not jumped for that quarterback of the future because he would have had to, I think, overdraft from his position to go get those guys. So I think if they're Will Howard, a Jackson Dart falls to you in the third round, I think John jumps this year, Wally. I think if that doesn't happen, where there's one of those guys that falls in that range and they start to get picked higher, Dart goes up in the first round, Howard goes up into the second, Milgroves goes up into the second, plays like that, I think John punts it to next year.
And I feel like that's mostly going to happen. I think Milrow could be a first rounder. Somebody out there is going to fall in love unhealthily.
I agree with you, because it's also how many quarterbacks are starved right now for a quarterback. From Jets teams to Raiders team to, we could go through the litany, Brendan, but there's at least, I think 12, 13 teams in this league that legitimately need a quarterback right now. And that's not going to push them down. It's not going to push them back in the draft. It's going to have only the effect of pushing them up.
I still don't think that Cam Ward should be in the top 5 of any reasonable NFL draft. But
I got a second round grade on him and Shadur.
Yeah, but I'm sure somebody will take him in the top 10 minimum.
Yeah. And
probably Shadur too, because that's just the way this works.
Probably top 5. They'll probably both go in the top 5 when it's all said and done. Yeah. And they shouldn't, but that's overdrafted is right. That's the overdrafted side. It's just, this is the nature of the beast right now. So it is hard to say, Wally, but that'd be my that'd be my caveat, is if the guys get overdrafted, he ain't doing it. But if they do drop to him in third, I think this is the year he would jump if a guy does fall that far to him.
Yeah, I'm hoping for Will Howard. I like Will Howard. He's the guy who's kind of grown on me.
He's probably he's right there as my favorite. Him and Dart are my two guys in there that I do like. But again, third round, not second round, right? Thank you, though, Wally. Appreciate that. And PG's got a great donation here right to our point on this. Thanks, P. He says, first round, we're going to go with the offensive line. Second round, we'll go Jackson Dart. Third round, offensive line or wide receiver.
I think you got to fit a tight end in there somewhere with Kubiak now.
Could you come back in the fourth round and grab a guy, though? It'll be a deep draft of tight ends. So there's probably going to be a guy in the fourth, too, to grab there.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how much you like Barner.
This is the best tight end draft I think I've seen in 10 years, depth-wise.
I would not have said that before the season started, but I think I get what you're getting at there. Yeah. It's pretty good.
It's pretty good. I think there's a lot of H-backs, so it is a lot of H. It's not a lot of end-line guys, but yeah, I think that's a good approach, BGZ. I think if you're talking about going from a value-based model, I do want to get Dart in the third round, but like we're talking about here, this thing could be elevated to where the value is that you have to take him in the second if you're going to grab him. He ain't going to be, he'll go early third. And if John's got the conviction in his heart for Dart, then you understand him picking him, there. But the value be about right. I like your wide receiver third round because that's kind of the better spot to take him versus, to me, the first or second round with the talent that's there, especially with so many slot wide receivers in this draft. And we'd be looking for more of an outside kind of guy. So I think you've got the right targeting spot for value. Top of the draft, that's where you want to be. PGZ is in that value mode, not in the drafting for need mode. So I think that'd work.
Yeah, I'm not into Dart. I don't think he has an NFL arm the way that I want my quarterback to have. I'm just not feeling it on that one. Again, I'm more Will Howard. And then if you want to go a little bit deeper than that, I think Riley Leonard could be kind of like white Jalen Hurts. Maybe on that. Interesting to see if he could do the arm stuff that Jalen can do, like 9 route throws, and hit those, because his accuracy has got some issues with him on that. Yeah. But I definitely think from a mobility standpoint, Riley gives you that Jackson Hurts kind of mobility, side. So maybe a team goes that route with him. It's very possible. Wally World, thank you for becoming a member of my channel over here on this side. Folks, if you're a member of my channel, we just did a call-in show yesterday. So take a look at Wally World, your community posts, that's where I put my membership benefits over there on that side of it. And we just did one yesterday. So check out that video. I did a couple hours chopping it up with some folks. Yeah, great. Cool.
But thank you, Wally. You're the man. Appreciate the donation and becoming a member. Thrill House, thanks for the $2 donation. He says, Gray Zabel said to have been the best at the bowl. Should we grab him?
I've looked at him a little bit. Isn't he a left tackle, a pure left tackle?
No, he's a guard. He'll be a guard center at the next level, but he's been a tackle. He's it's the Dakota State guy. So he's out there at Dakota, small school, getting away with it. Can't get away with it at the pro level.
Right. I mean, my impression was he was a little too small to play guard, but maybe you could get away with that in a zone blocking scheme. I'll have to look deeper into him.
Yeah, well, it's always hard too when you're only looking at tackle snaps, and I have a hard time with these prospects necessarily knowing for sure that this guy will go to guard when you're watching everything happen with him at tackle. But to your point, Thrill House, he's been maybe the best offensive lineman at Senior Bowl this week. And this is the guy, Brendan, that when you talk about Dakota, this is the main guy that's got to shine in the Senior Bowl, right? Because you're looking at the level of competition he's going against at Dakota State, and you're going accountants, lawyers, doctors, and such, right? So you're going, you're not going up against the best here. I don't know how necessarily good you are, especially for a guy that's got to transition to a different position. But he might be a guard, might be a center at the next level. Center's another potential option for him there, Thrill House. I still do have a second round grade on him. I can't quite say I can sign up on getting him in the first round. But to take him in the second, I think that this would be a perfectly good pick to grab in the second. Good value there. And he's earned the right. He's legitimized himself with this week of the Senior Bowl. Some guys don't have to have this kind of week like he does. But given you'd have those question marks with him on tape coming out of the program he was coming out of, you really want to see that solidify with this week in Senior Bowl. And it has. He's looked really good.
Yeah. I'm going to have to look into him a little bit more. He's somebody that I wasn't really paying attention to before this Senior Bowl started.
Yeah. And it'll be a tough evaluation for you too, because he is, again, it is tackled. I don't know. You're looking for bending, you're looking for leverage wins if they can transition inside, Brendan, but some of that stuff is sometimes hard to necessarily see all the time and kind of read with it. So, but he's looked good on the one-on-ones and he's legit in that way. I think just get him in the second round. Don't want to overdraft on that one thrill house. But thank you, man. Appreciate the donation.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move to the spot here where I want to show a couple of clips for you guys on this to give you a little bit where it's not going to be a deep dive to try to go, look at this defensive player here, there. I wanted to just kind of show you in kind of a broad stroke fashion here with about 10 cut up clips, a little bit of what you're going to be getting here with Kubiak as far as an OC and what he brings to the table. And I think these clips can kind of show some of, what you can kind of expect. And what these clips are really going to show at the heart of it is, one, the unpredictability, and you're going to notice in the defense and how these guys are moving prior to the snap that they don't know what's coming. You can really feel that energy from the safeties to the linebackers and their tentativeness and how they move. I mean, first and foremost. Number two, sequencing, setting plays up. I'm going to make this look like this. I'm going to make this look like this. I'm going to make this look like this. And then bam, I'm going to come back over here because I get the defense leaning. And these are two things you're going to feel with this on some of these cut-ups, I think. It's just, again, we're not trying to go hour deep on this here too much today, folks. It's going to be a pretty quick show, but I wanted to show you a couple of these cut-ups to give you kind of an idea of this. So let's get into the first one of this. And what I'm going to show you in the first couple of these is going to be the setup. So this is a setup play here, this run. It's an inside zone, boom, nothing fancy here, right? Just an inside zone, but notice how it all looks kind of the same. Come back here, another couple plays later, you run the very same thing to the right rather than the left. So same, inside zone now to the right. You ran it from the left, you go to the right. Okay, this is all on the same drive, folks, against the Dallas Cowboys. Now what do you come back with literally 2 plays later? This play. Play action on the inside zone. Now you come back to the screen and Kimura busts it. Touchdown. I can't show the whole play because it's too long on a play. We don't want to get copywritten here.
Right.
But again, coming back on the play action, the Cowboys, look at the steps on the Cowboys defense. What I want you to watch here is watch how the Cowboys defense comes up and steps hard up on that play action. They're not sort of just sitting down. They're coming up on this play to play that play action. And then boom, you've caught him.
6 defenders are past the running back.
Yeah. Essentially, they've all run past because they think this is now they're completely in on the play. Because look, they're not getting uphill because they're rushing the pass here, Brendan. They're getting uphill because they're trying to play the run, right? These are all run fits they're trying to play off of. But you've got them so locked in by those previous 2 plays on this same drive with their eyes and with what you've got them doing with the sequencing that bam, you can come back and you can hit them. Another part of what he does well, and this is going to be a thing that shows both the sequencing and also the little bit of the uniqueness to what Kubiak brings on these next 2 plays, Brendan, is the deep shots. A lot of people worry about the fact that this offense has so much of them matriculating the ball and slowly working it up like we see Shanahan, where he just doesn't use as much of the deep stuff, does he? And some of that's because he's had the quarterbacks in Garoppolo and Purdy can't throw the balls, but he also just doesn't attack in that way as a centerpiece. What you do get here from Kubiak, game A number, bam here against the Cowboys, you get it off the run look, big play action play down the field. Everything's from under center, but again, that inside zone stuff opens this play up. Look at how wide open that receiver is. There's 5 yards of room around this receiver. This is also attacking the cover 3, right, Brendan? So this is attacking the old Carroll staple, where this is a cover 3 defense on the back end. In-cutting routes are death for the cover. So between the play action under center and then the attacking of the coverage that you're anticipating you're going to get from the Cowboys makes this play wide open. This receiver's not winning the route, Brendan. Olave's not winning the route here. He's running a good route, but this is a high school player could run that route. But this is all set up and designed, again, not doing the shotgun stuff you talked about earlier, walking away from that. That's why this works so well. Look at the middle linebacker on this.
Yeah, he looks lost. He looks lost. And
that's Eric Kendricks, man. That's not a rookie inside linebacker. That's a guy that's played 10 years in this league, who's played really well in this league. Another big play. Same Cowboys game. Again, off the play action. Now, what I want to show, Brendan, on this, so this comes later in the game from this play, right? So Watch that top safety, okay? I want you to watch the high safety on the high side. Okay, see what happens to him where he plays the cover 3 high. It's probably a man match where he's supposed to probably man match this, Brendan, where it's cover 3 man match where if you're on top, but if he cuts it in, you got to jump the route underneath. You got to kind of react in that way. He stays in cover 3 on the end cutting. So the coach probably comes back to him and he's like, look, you've got to play that, right? So now watch what the safety does on this play, Brendan. That same safety, watch what happens. Did you kind of see it there? I know it's subtle, but just if you can, folks, lock in on that free safety high to the top side of the screen there and what he does. He takes the undercutting route. Look at him. twice.
Yeah.
He gets baited on the undercutting route twice on one play. And it's that little bit of being baited right here, and it's just enough to free up Shaheed to be then opened up over the top. Right. So but it's set up. It's sequenced and it's a big play. It's sequenced off the in cutting route that was wide open. The safety draws up to then free up the play over the top. So he's sequencing things. Grubb was just calling plays. I'm going to call this in the first quarter. I'll call this in the second quarter. I'll call this in the third quarter. Here you're setting things up to make it happen. It's what good play callers are supposed to do. Here's another one. First opening week of the season. Another deep shot going against the Carolina Panthers. Not even play action, right? So first here, he's hitting this 3 wide receivers. What I want you to watch in these 2 places, they're going to look exactly the same as far as the formation looks, okay? As far as how it's set up, Brendan. You're not doing anything fancy. This is out of shotgun. So you got the safety. Notice that's what I want you to look at here is that single high safety here, Brendan. See that single high safety and what he does? Gets caught up inside, okay?
He bites.
Now we come back. Yeah, he really bought. And that's even off, Brendan. That's shotgun. That's no play action he bought. Because he's bought, what is he doing? The Shanahan routes are all shorter routes, right? So the cool thing with Kubiak is that he's always got that deeper route where Shanahan will just live short. So now when you come up and you compress that short stuff, especially if you're drawing the safety up, he's got the route over the top to clip you. And that's where a lot of West Coast and some of the Shanahan schemes don't have this as much as it just, they want to live a little bit more shorter. But now watch what happens is same formation. Watch that safety high, Brendan. He's late to get over to the top side. They don't complete it, but see where he's going from the previous play? He's attacking down. Yeah, he's attacking down because you're running the same formation. So it's exactly the same guys in the same spot. That guy beat over the top here. So I'm taking that thing away that we got beat on before. And then by me going there, the 9 route going then to the backside is now open with the one-on-one that I've got. So real quickly, again, on the first one, he bites on the undercut. He's like, ooh, I just got beat deep on that. So now he comes back and he goes, okay, I'm going to now make sure I eliminate that receiver to the backside. But that makes him a hair late to then getting over to the receiver on the top side. Kenneth Walker, we talked about how he could be utilized, Brendan, in this system a little bit better. And what I like about a play like this is an option play on this one. So they audible to this play. You're in shotgun. And I know I can't show you the pre-snap on this a lot, Brendan, but if you'll notice, there's an extra defender on the high side of this on the line of scrimmage. So look on the line of scrimmage at the 2 defenders at the high side of the line of scrimmage.
The right side, you mean?
Yeah, the right side. Yeah. So you see that guy? So what that does is it gives the Saints a numbers game to the left side. So they audible to this pitch play to Kimura. And can you not picture a Walker with his speed on this kind of play? Just quickly able to get out and really make them pay the price if they overload to one side. So I'll show another play like this too, where they have these audibles built within it's a simple audible to attack. Then when you get that stack front, essentially, because you get the stack front here where they're threatening the blitz on the top side. And that's where this is now making them pay the price just with their alignment. It's like what you could do with the double A gap mug pressure. The 2 inside linebackers go double A gap. You've got 4 down linemen, and then you've got an option bubble screen route you throw. Just because those guys in the double A gap can't get over to the bubble screen guy. And so you can get a bit of a numbers game over on that side. But if you're looking at get a Walker in space, have a methodology to be able to just kind of work him the ball and let him use his speed and stuff. There's these kind of plays over and over. I saw the Saints work off of when they would go to shotgun if they felt a little bit of those stack fronts and simulated pressures. Also, you mentioned the stretch play with Walker.
Yeah.
This is going to be the stuff that I think works really well with him as well. Like you got here with Kimura. I mean, Kimura's untouched on this play. It's so blocked up so well. And nobody's dominating their block. You take advantage of Micah Parsons getting a little too wide on setting the edge here on the bottom of your screen. That opens the hole. You got guys pulling out in front. When the fullback designs are in this offense too, Brendan, and noticing the receiver is always in motion prior to the snap. So even if you don't have the fullback in an I formation and there's a fullback lead, the receiver serves as the default fullback. So watch the receiver on this play. Come see the receiver, Shaheed, I think that is. He's essentially your lead fullback there.
Yeah.
And so there's always a lead fullback. And when it comes to a guy like Walker, the big problem we've had with him at times in recent years, isn't it, is the penetration. And having that lead fullback can oftentimes give you the guy to take away the quick penetration guy. To now Walker doesn't have to do that on his own, right? Where he doesn't have to break the tackle in the backfield and then go get his way out. That guy can eliminate that quick penetration on the play if you've mucked up something and still be able to have success on the play with it. So there's always usually kind of a lead fullback. And what's nice with this, Brendan, is that then they can do this where you run outside zone, but bam, that's that freedom I was talking about, where if Walker feels them press too high on the outside, right, where they're oversetting the edge and they overrun it because they're getting lateral, so they overrun their lateral attack, he can now cut back inside, Brendan, and have that ability to then feel it that way. So you're still giving him some creativity, right? You're not putting him under the full robot special thing of this, Brendan, on he's got to kind of run it like a, just go where we tell you to go. Another quick one here, fullback dive. I love this play, Brendan, because you have both the receiver going in motion. You make it look like outside zone to Kimura, but you're coming back to the fullback on a 3rd and short. So the receiver.
This was short yardage?
Short yardage. This is a 3rd and 1.
Okay.
So you see the receiver first. The receiver goes in motion, bottom of the screen. You make it look like outside zone. You have a wide open hole there for Taysom Hill. Because you've run this out of outside zone in this game a couple of times on the Falcons. So that's what they've looked at, that sequencing thing. You've seen sequencing. Now that sets up this other play when you need it on 3rd and short. Inside fly sweep fake. So this is an inside zone fly zone sweep fake here. So inside, handoff. Kimura gets 5 yards, okay? But you saw the wide receiver, right, going over the top?
Oh, yeah, I see.
Okay.
That's like, that's like the old, I saw JSN do that a couple times over the last couple of years, yeah.
Very next play. It doesn't go for anything, but can you see why it would work? So you go here, 6 yards, get the defense thinking inside zone. Then you come back, fake the inside zone, go back to the fly sweep outside. Sequencing plays, setting one thing up for the other thing to be successful in the next play. And I know it didn't work, but this is stuff that will work. This is the stuff that you can understand. This is the thing Grubb was not doing.
Yeah. Nobody scores a touchdown every play.
Nobody scores a touchdown every play. Inside zone off of an audible adjustment, Brendan. Look, this is the Coach Carroll special in the final year. 2 wide nines, 2 stacked inside defensive linemen. Carr makes an audible call because they've got the numbers up there for an inside zone. Like that's inside zone's going to kill this kind of formation with a 6-man box, 2 high shell on the backside. That's an easy 6 yards, right? I mean, are they blocking this up, Brendan? Do you see guys driving guys off the line? In fact, they think it's a throw, right? The defensive linemen are getting upfield like they think this is a pass. But all you're doing is you're just catching that wide alignment where those guys are just not in a position to be able to do anything. Look how far those edges are, Brendan. Look how big that hole is for Kimura. Now you come back on the next play, Brendan. Watch this. Watch 55, the inside linebacker here. See that step?
Yeah.
Did you see that? Look at false. That's a false step, folks. So when he's on this play, watch 55 here. He's no false step, right? You see him? He just played it straight up. So 55, watch again, folks. If I can, sorry. My thing's not working. No, let me do it. Damn it. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, he goes the wrong way, right?
Goes the wrong way. And that's the next play from that inside zone you ran. So sequencing, setting one thing up to the next, and taking advantage of the last play to make the next play kind of work. Just the last couple here, Brendan, I just want to show these. This last one I like a lot. You got a spread formation attack here against the Kansas City Chiefs. And so, Brendan, just take a look at the routes being run on this play. Chiefs are in a cover 2 shell. Okay. I want to show this one a couple times and have to set the stage on this one a lot. So cover 2, safeties go like this. My middle linebacker goes to depth atypically. Old school wise, you told that linebacker to run between the seams deep to the center field of the field, right? Because if my safeties are going like this, there's the hole in that center point. Do you notice with the inside linebacker how he doesn't climb with a lot of depth?
Yeah, he's in no man's land.
He's in no man's land. And then you've got your safeties showing you pure cover 2. Now, unfortunately, on this play, the Saints have out-cutting routes with their receivers, right? They have nothing attacking deep here. Very same drive. Again here, this is an empty look, right, Brendan? No running back. So this is the very same look I want to show you on this with this play now on the very same drive. Touchdown. So again, notice on this, cover 2 shell again is what you get. You get cover 2 post snap. Look at that inside linebacker, Brendan. Do you notice what he does there? Just lock in on him. That same shallow read, that same shallow point he was in earlier on that drive. And Kubiak caught it. Linebacker's not climbing to where he needs to be climbing on the cover 2. We got an opening here. I'm going to go attack it deep, and I'm going to rip their ass for doing that. And then he ripped their ass for doing it. So it's the sequencing of plays. It's recognizing what the defense is doing coverage-wise, adjusting to it, and then attacking it. And I saw when watching him, especially in the early season last year with the Saints and doing this, he really does a good job of this. I think this is something that's been missing from our offense now for a couple of years, Brendan. And part of why I was so hot to trot on this guy is I knew that this was what he's going to bring as a centerpiece point, and you got to have it in this day and age.
Yeah, it's a good process. I know the results haven't been great for him yet, but the process has been very good.
It has. It doesn't guarantee success with him, but I think that they made the right hire with this one, by and large part because he does understand that this has got to be a necessity of your offensive attack in this day and age. You're not just calling plays. You're not just doing what Grubb was doing, Brendan, which is trying to isolate the mismatches and attack that. You have to attack coverages, not mismatches. Coverages. That's where it is in the end. You can do that in college. College, you can get away with mismatches because there's such a difference in talent. But the NFL level, the talent's too similar. You got to attack the coverages instead, and that's exactly what he's going to do.
Right.
PGZ, thank you for the $5 donation. He says, the way Mike Green did Connolly, I took him off my board completely. You probably like seeing that, didn't you, as a Husky?
Mm-hmm.
As a Husky, huh? You probably heard him out a couple times, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look at that. Look at Lister Connolly just getting dumped on his butt.
Yeah, Mike Green, people are turning on to him. He's moving up.
I think he got in the first round. And he did the old Deion Sanders run the 40, go jump in the limo move. Because as soon as he dumped Connerly on his butt, I think he walked right off the field and he's like, my work here is done. I've cemented my status. So he's fun, man. He's that kind of pass rusher. They always like to use it's one of my favorite references for an edge rusher, Brendan, is he's a rolling ball of knives off the edge. You just, oh no, you're trying to block him, it's just like he's slapping and slashing and arms ripping down and just twitch and bend, and it's all coming at you at once a little bit with Mike Green. He's fun.
I've had my eye on him during the season, but I did not think he was going to get up to the first round. So he's done well.
Yeah, especially because this is also, it's a deep ass edge class. There's a lot of good edges up in the first and the second round. So for him to separate himself at this point, but he seems like he's just taking that Chop Robinson, Will McDonald kind of elevation thing. Those guys were sort of second round. He got through the pre-draft process. By the post-draft process, they were sort of into that 20s range in the first round. And I can see Mike having the very similar thing going down with him.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Interested to see how long his arms are. Yeah,
that's true. That's true. If he's got 33, he's guaranteed a first. If he's 32 and a half, that might be enough of a factor to dip him down a bit on that. But I don't think you can lose a rep worse than Connerly lost that rep. And that's going to happen. It's also why I've not been big on Connerly. It's not because I'm slow to warm up on him. People think he was going to become a guard. I don't know if he's got the power to be a guard. He's kind of finessey out there at left tackle. I don't know. Have you looked at him?
A little bit. He hasn't been high on my list. Again, I'm trying to focus in on the interior guys more than anything, but he hasn't been somebody that I've thought that much of overall, I guess. And also that Oregon system, you never give up pressure just by design. It feels like every Oregon offensive line is like, I played the whole season and I gave up 2 pressures. And my coach got really mad at me for those 2 pressures. I almost got benched.
It's true. It's hard. It makes it hard to evaluate him. And I'll say outside of Penny Sewell and Jackson Powers Johnson, we had a lot of very good offensive linemen come through. There's a lot of guys that get drafted, it seems like, from Oregon, but has there been a lot of really good ones in recent years, really, that have come out of that program, to your point, on, again, that blocking style and scheme? So
has JPJ been good? I actually don't know. I haven't followed him.
I think he made the all-rookie team or something like that. I don't think he was like dominant, but he was like passable, okay. I believe. But I'm speaking out of school. I don't know for sure on that. Bryce Coots in the house, man. Our man out of Hawk Zone, and folks, do please get over there to Hawk Zone Rundown and sub up to them, as they do some great work over there on their side of it, and they're really growing and cooking along now. It's good to see there, Bryce, on your guys' side. Thank you for the $10 dono. Says, I look forward to this show every week. Great content, guys. Well, thank you, Bryce. Very, very kind of you to say, man. I really thank you for hopping on in here. And again, you guys are kicking ass and taking names over there on your side of it. So keep kicking butt. Keep doing what you guys are doing on your end. We got to get you over here on my side here at some point too, Bryce. I know I keep saying that, but we definitely got to do that as well, man.
Yeah. Thank you, Bryce. Welcome.
Appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate you.
Legacy Comedy with a $2 donation says, what number do you not go over for the APY for Geno?
I think if you get to 45, you have to make a tough decision. For me,
Ooh,
that's where
you'll go up higher than I'll go.
I mean, I'm hoping you can get him for less, of course, but I think 45 is where I'm like, okay, I don't think I can do this anymore.
Legacy, I will not go up over $37.5 million. If Geno was a 29-year-old, 30-year-old guy, I think 45, I'd be where Brendan's at with the 45. But the age, the injury history the last 2 years, being at the end of the year, he's beaten up, and now that's not all his fault, but like is what it is. I'd want to keep him at somewhat of a value-based spot if we're re-signing him. And I think if we get up to 45, I think we get up to 40. We're not at a value-based spot with Geno at that point. And so 37.5 is about as high as I'd be willing to go.
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that can work out. But I mean, with the way the quarterback market is, I'm a little bit skeptical. We'll have to see what his priorities are. The good news is it's very rare you find a quarterback in Geno's situation. So it's hard to draw up an accurate comparison.
I think that's fair. I think too, to your point on the 45, some of this is also drawn by what the market would be willing to give him if Seattle wasn't willing to give him that deal. Like they can't just go to him and say, we want to only give you 37.5. And there is some team like the Raiders out there or the Steelers out there that would say, well, we give you the 42, we give you the 43. And then you're going, no, we're not giving you that. We've got club control. That's all good. Like it's good in theory to say we got club control. We're going to hold on to you with the death grip and we'll just have you play out the final year of your contract. But if that's the place that plays out where there's another team willing to offer more bread, and then he's probably moved at that point, right? If it plays out in that way.
Right. I agree. I think I agree with that. I think not extending him is tantamount to saying you don't want him.
Yes. Agreed. And it just won't, it's where it won't play out. It's got to be signed or you got to trade him. There's not a third option here, unfortunately. Some would like it to be, but there isn't, unfortunately, on that. Devon Tuggle, over on your side with a $5 donation. Thank you, Devon, for that. Says, thoughts on taking KJ Jefferson undrafted if Milroe doesn't fall to the third round?
I mean, you can't go wrong with picking up somebody undrafted, whoever it is, really. So sure, but I seriously doubt he has anything left in the tank at this point. He's probably taken such a beating because of how he plays. I'd be surprised if there's much of any NFL career for him at this point.
Yeah, it's a guy that if you're talking about undrafted, Devin, I don't have any issue, especially if you weren't able to get a quarterback in this draft, taking a guy like that and seeing what he can maybe do. KJ's really just been one of those QBs that's sort of just not really developed. It's a bit like a Quinn Ewers or Tyler Van Dyke is another one of the guys that we've been looking at, it seems like, for about 16 years. And the guys just never change when you turn on the tape with them. They are what they kind of are. In KJ's case, he's a poor man's Cam Newton is pretty much how he's built and how he throws. And he's got physical ability and he certainly can run with the ball and be very physical. Now, maybe you could kind of gadget guy him a little bit like Milroe or like a Taysom Hill. I mean, maybe you could do a little bit of that stuff, but he certainly is just not a quarterback. DJ Ugolele is another guy like this, where it's like the guy's got the physical ability. That's undeniable. They can move. They're big. They got a strong arm. But when it all comes down to watching them play the position, it's rough. It's just it's not a smooth watching experience.
Yeah. It's KJ, the fact that he kept going back to college year after year should tell you all you need to know. If he was good, he would have declared long ago, because his career was never going to be more than maybe like 6-7 years.
That's true. Yeah, the way he's going to play, it wasn't going to last a long time. So he's kept bouncing back and just not developed. Sometimes it happens. Some guys just don't come forward in their game. They just get kind of stifled. Sanchez, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, line on KJ hired by the Raiders. KJ Wright got hired. Is he asking what would the line be? Like, what's the odds, are you saying? Or is he saying was KJ hired?
I don't think it's happened yet, so I would assume he's talking about the line.
I think that there's like a 90% chance it happens.
Right.
So I would think Salah's going to have some history with KJ, and that Salah was with Seattle when KJ was there as a player. So maybe they make a bit of a sales pitch to KJ, But I mean, KJ wasn't able to get Devondre Campbell not to quit. That's a low blow. That's a low blow. I can't say that. But I do think Carroll will be making a heavy push to get KJ in there. I know KJ talked a lot about when he was doing his podcast about how much he was getting pulled by the coaching staff to come in there and coach, and how he knew eventually it was going to happen. So it seems like, it seems like it is something that would go down. But again, to the Raiders with Saleh there, it's maybe more 50-50 because Saleh is there and he does have that history. And who else is, they're going to go with instead of that?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it would have been 90% before they got Saleh because I thought the Niners might be changing their defensive scheme a little bit. And I know that ultimately KJ Wright is loyal to the scheme. He wants to, he wants to continue. He wants to go somewhere where he can coach the Carroll scheme. But I guess now, do you think he did a good job last year? I guess would be part of the question here. That's always hard to determine, right?
It is, because I think Fred Warner was dealing with some fracture in the foot or something through all the year, and Devondre Campbell wasn't a good player before he came there, and he was their George Fant insurance policy for Dre Greenlaw, right? Like if Dre can get back quick, then great. If he can't, and so you understand if he doesn't get Campbell playing particularly good brand of football, it's like nobody was, and a lesser Fred Warner, okay, and that's since they are just kind of inside linebackers, and then they have four down linemen. That's all he's kind of responsible for. D Winters played pretty well when he was out there. The TCU kid, we liked him coming out a couple years ago.
Oh yeah.
He gave him some interesting moments last season. So that wasn't bad, but there's not a lot of work, there's not a lot of to go off of. Warner kind of was what he was. Campbell was what he was. So it's,
and we need to preemptively talk about what we're going to do to the NFL if Saleh leaves in a year to get a head coaching job and the Niners get 2 third-round picks from him again.
Don't they have to be there 2 years? I think they have to be there 2 years as a coordinator.
Okay. Hopefully that's true, because I'm not going to be happy if they just turn Robert Saleh into like a third-round pick farm cheat. That's not okay.
I'm with you on that. It is getting a little bit old with all these extra picks these guys are getting for this thing. And so I mentioned in my chat last night about it's like this. There was a time and place where this was a necessity. I don't know that this is as much a necessity now to do this. I think coaches of color, minority hires are getting hired. It's not as where maybe the league was on this way 20 years ago on this. That's just a general feeling. I don't have data to back it up, but it does feel like something that's not necessarily as needed now as it maybe once was.
Right.
I can get with the Rooney Rule thing where people just abuse the Rooney Rule that one's one where it's like that's one where it needs a modification. And maybe this is their attempt to do this, but this is just too much. It's a little bit of an overkill, I think, in doing it this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're probably going to get rid of it soon, so we got to take advantage of it while we can. There's not much time left. Aiden Dirk, man. Aiden Dirk.
Come on, Aiden. I heard Kubiak's got a little bit of. No, I'm kidding. It's got a little bit of something. So give me a grade on this hire, Brendan. Give me the grade on your Kubiak hire. I know, and when it all comes down to it, for the guys that were available, was this your best guy for the guys we know available on those two kind of final answers?
Well, I did have a moment of hesitation when Slowick shook free unexpectedly. But after looking into that a little bit, I don't know if it would have been a good fit. He had a lot of the same problems that Grubb did, if we're being honest. Like, it was very similar to what Grubb went through last year here. So, honestly, I can't think of much else we could have done that would have been better. So how can I give it anything other than an A, right? If I can't come up with anything better that we could have done, like you can't hire Mike McDaniel. You can't hire Kevin Stefanski. Looks like you can't hire Frank Reich. Maybe Stenovich would have been better, but Stenovich has never called plays before, so you just don't know. Maybe you could have dug up one or two other guys that would have been a little bit better, but I don't think you could have had a much better fit than this personally.
I agree with you, man. I have the same kind of grade. These are decisions that don't get made, and just from what you want. Ideally, it's what is really truly available and out there. And there was a lot of untested options they could have gone with. Hank Fraley went back to Detroit, not as an OC. They hired a whole different OC. That's an indicator there in that that probably wouldn't have been a good hire if they themselves aren't going to replace this guy that would have been seemingly the number one candidate to replace him there.
Same for Engstrand, by the way. He's gone now. So they must think very little of him.
Yeah, that's not a good sign too on an Engstrand guy. He's not. Did he go to Chicago or is he just?
He went to the Jets. He went to the Jets.
Okay. So it was a little lean out there, folks. It was no Dable, no McDaniel, like you said. You had to kind of go grab the best, and I think that they grabbed the best guy. I think this is a guy on the rise. There is a little bit of this. You're grabbing a coaching prospect a little bit because there's only those 2 OC stops. But the work that he did with the Vikings, I think, can't be undersold. And the fact that was really Zimmer kind of failing there at the end. That was him running out of gas at the end. That was nothing that was representatory of the job Kubiak was doing. He was getting the job done on that Vikings. He was maximizing out. And indeed, I think even getting a little bit more from that unit because I think that was a young offensive line. O'Neal was good, but Darrisaw was a rookie, just kind of learning his way in there. And it wasn't necessarily great across that. So I think he did a good job there in that stop. That's as much should inform anybody as anything beyond the Saints job with all the injuries that he had to deal with there, Brendan. But we got a good coach. We got the right guy that's going to be able to help this team out and improve this offensive line just on his scheme alone. It's not going to improve it wholly on that. You need the line talent in addition to this, Brendan, but it's going to help in addition to the talent that you bring in to try to reinforce the ranks. And it should make this offense better on the whole as we go into the future. Yeah,
I'm excited for it. There's a lot that I like. I mean, maybe the one thing, just real quick here at the end of the show, one more thing. Very low in play action rate throughout most of his career. I'm interested to know if that's because he's mostly playing from behind when play action is less effective, or if he's just not a big play action guy. That's something I'm interested to see this year.
We shall see on that. That's a part to pay attention and keep an eye on with him. And if that is, I think you make a good point in that there's a lot of those games you're behind at times where not as much leaning on it when it is that way because you know that the defense ain't playing the threat of that. So what's the point of doing it? If they're not going to take those false steps up. And I will say, when you do look at some of the tape stuff of those play actions he does use in games, it is a fact. That's the other thing with it is when you're not doing it as much. And then when you do it, does seem like he gets those false steps up. He gets the safeties to climb a little bit up in false steps off the play action with that when he does run it. So it is effective when he does utilize it. It does have that proper intended effect as you'd kind of hope. Last donation here from Sanchez is finishing us off with a double dip donation. Sanchez, I salute you, brother. It was great talking to you last night too as well, man. He says Kubiak is a satisfying hire. Satisficing hire, not a satisfying hire. Like sacrificing?
I'm not sure what this one's getting at either. Sorry, Sanchez. I'm trying to put this one through Rosetta Stone, and I'm not picking it up.
I think you're doing like a sacrificing. Is a sacrificing maybe higher is what you were meaning on that.
I can't make any sense of that, though. I don't know what that means.
I think it's really deep. That's why I'm trying to get to the heart because there's something deep here with this one. He's going to get the job done, I think, Sanchez. I do. I can't guarantee it. That's for sure. You never know on these kind of things, but I think that he did a good hire. They brought the best one in they could of the options that were available. And I think it'll work well with Mike McDonald's defense. Should be good, challenging in practices between the two of these two because they both kind of do the same thing. Defensively, you're not going to know what we're going to do post-snap. Offensively, you're not going to know what we're going to do post-snap. Your pre-snap reads are null and void. And that should make each side kind of able to challenge the other. But sorry, man, Sanchez, I'm not quite sure as well with Brendan on that one. You might have been meaning exactly there on that.
Yeah,
you're not super satisfied by the hire though. If that's what it was meaning, that you were kind of underwhelmed a little bit. Would have been great if we had a little bit more extra candidates out there. That would have been nice to have some maybe former head coach guys that were truly out there and available. That would have been cool.
Right, which was my preference to try to find, but if they're not there, they're not there.
What are you going to do on that? Well, folks, do me this favor. If you can for me, please hit the like button on either side, whether you're watching on Seahawks, Brendan Nelson, or over here on the Hawks Nest, either side, hit the like button, sub on up to, doesn't cost anything. It is a free function over here on this side of it. Me and Brendan will be continuing on through this off season. We're got a loose, free and easy, loose kind of schedule. If there's any breaking news, obviously we'll come through with it on that side of it, but we'll kind of keep this easy and peasy this off season as far as we go, but we will keep cooking along here. Brendan, thank you for jumping in today and working with me on the schedule. Sorry I had to bump yesterday a little bit. Just
not a problem.
Rolling around through a little bit on that side. So appreciate you as always on this, man.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you guys for watching, and thank you guys for all the donations, the new members of the channel on all the sides of it. Both me and Brendan really do appreciate all of that support you guys bring on both sides of it. You guys help make us go and allow us to keep doing what we get to do here. So thank you on that side.
Thank you.
We will see if we're back. We might take a break next week. We'll see what's kind of where we're at with the schedule. We're kind of putting our off-season schedule together a little bit as it stands right now, but we will keep you guys updated on that and informed. Until we're back next time, we got our coach, got our OC in place. We got our DC head coach in place. The parts are sliding in. Yeah, we got to get the offensive line. Yeah, there's work to be done and extensions and all that now, but the first shoe is dropped. It's been a good shoe. It's the right shoe. They didn't fail here. They didn't get it wrong. Let's just keep now stacking up these off-season wins here with free agency and the draft, Brendan, and build this. What Carol used to call it, the championship off-season. Wasn't that what they'd reference? So let's have a championship offseason from a Hawks perspective, knock these moves out the park, vault this team to a contender status, and be able to cover a team that's actually out there really just kicking ass and taking names next year, Brendan. Does that sound good to you?
It's been a while since we've been able to do that, so I'm down.
It has indeed. Let's see if they can pull it off. Thank you guys for watching today. We'll be back soon. Until next time, don't you ever forget, don't you do it. Don't you do it. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.